Yes, good morning and good formiddag. My name is Jeppe Olsen and I'm the CEO or the VD of SynAct Pharma. I'm today joined by the founder and also the CSO of the company, Thomas Jonassen. And we have decided to split the presentation in two. First, I will tell you a little bit about the company and where we are. And Thomas will tell you a little bit more about what we actually do and where we're heading. Just as a very brief introduction, SynAct Pharma in a nutshell. Our lead project we have named AP1189, and that is an melanocortin agonist, and we are looking at illnesses within psoriasis and rheumatoid arthritis. We are currently in phase 1, which we are just about to conclude, and then we are heading on to a phase 2 study. We are a very focused biotech company, but the last 12-18 months have shown us that there is other opportunities for our compound, and therefore we have initiated some preclinical studies to look at other indications. And that is indications that is going to compete with an existing drug that's already on the market called Actar, produced by a US-based company called Mallinckrodt, and currently selling for $1.2 billion. It's a drug that is well known, has a lot of side effects, and we believe that we can offer something which is an alternative and which is also an oral treatment so that you avoid injectables. We are looking at huge markets. We have what we call in our industry blockbuster potential. We believe that we have an attractive business model. We are not a company that shall bring this product all the way to the market. We are dependent on finding a partner, and we believe that we have a good possibility of doing so upon receiving positive data in phase 2. We have a strong IP position. We are not in a situation where we have all our IP strategy based on applications. We have actually granted patents, and that makes what we believe quite a big difference. We have an experienced management team. We have been in this industry, all of us, for more than 15 years, and we have been working a lot with this specific technology in other companies also that we have now divested or exited. Just a very brief overview of our share. We have been listed at Aktietorvet in July 2016. And I believe that we have had a good journey with good liquidity and good interest for our company. We were introduced at a share price of 6.4 Swedish crowns, and we are now trading somewhere between 13.5 and 14 Swedish crowns. It gives us a market cap of around 160 million Swedish crowns. We, as Peter alluded to, we have just completed a rights issue, and that has been subscribed with 196%, and we are of course very pleased with that. So I would like to use this opportunity to thank the investors who have shown an interest and been buying shares. It means a lot for us. We are going to be able to expand our business scope with these money, so we are very pleased with that. We, of course, have a lockup, and we have all in management and also in the board. We have been investing in all rounds, and we will continue to do so. So we are in here for the long run, and we believe that it's important to send a signal that we're in the same boat as our investors. Just very briefly on the team, I have spent more than 15 years in this industry, building a number of companies, and also managed to sell quite a few of those, especially to American takers. I spent nearly 12 years in a company called Action Pharma. Some of you might have heard about it. It was a company within the same area of our technology where we sold the lead project back in 2012 to AbbVie for 105 million euro. During that journey, I was together with Thomas all the way, and actually also our chairman, Torbjørn Bjerke. Thomas is the founder of SynAct and has a deep knowledge and a deep understanding of the technology, and also been the founder of another successful company called TXP Pharma, located in Switzerland, which made a major deal with Mallinckrodt a couple of years ago. We have our CFO, Henrik Stage. Henrik is also here today. Henrik has a long-lasting background from biotech companies in Denmark. The most well-known is Santaris Pharma, which was acquired by Roche some years ago for $400 million. Torbjørn Bjerke, some of you might know him. He's quite well known here in Sweden. Has been CEO of private and also of public listed companies, and has a large experience of doing deals and have done deals for more than $2 billion. Lars Adelson, former CEO of Medivir, also a strong background, and then Charlotte Edenius. Charlotte have spent most of her life in the area that we work with, and been bringing products from the early clinic into late stage product and all the way to the market, exactly where we are with our compound. So we use the board a lot. We have a very active interaction, and it works well for us. When you work with biotech companies, and when you as an investor look at biotech companies, I think one of the key factors is really to find out if this company is capable of doing an exit. Because most of these companies, most of our size, will not be able to bring these products to the market. So therefore we are very dependent on that we can do a deal at some point during the journey. So that is critical, and we in the management team, we have done a number of deals, and it's important to say that some of the deals that we have selected here, they are all in exactly the same area where SynAct is operating. The first deal, I mentioned that before. That was the deal where the main program from Action Pharma was sold to AbbVie in an all-cash deal. The next deal is a company called TXP Pharma that we created, and that we managed to do a deal with Questcor Mallinckrodt of an option to acquire deal worth close to 100 million euro. The next one, we cannot take the credit for that one, but that where Questcor was acquired by Mallinckrodt, and as you can see, it is definitely substantial numbers. So this slide is basically to tell you that there is a big appetite from big pharma in acquiring these programs, and we know that upon receiving hopefully phase 2 data with a positive result, we know that there's takers out there. We know that there is a good interest, and of course we are in dialogue with these takers because it takes time to complete these deals. Just a short overview slide here showing you where we are exactly. In 2017, we spent most of the time on getting the program into phase 1 and been running the phase 1, and then at the same time plan for the phase 2 program. Here in 2018, we are going to report the results shortly for the phase 1 study. And we are going to initiate also very shortly the phase 2 program. As mentioned before, we have been convinced that the compound can be used for other indications, and therefore we have initiated some preclinical studies that will enable us to broaden the indication that we are working with. And the main reason for doing so is to support the compound, so that when we are going to do a deal, we can look into a bigger market, and also hopefully get more bidders, so that we can optimize the deal when hopefully we will be able to do some deal making. And then, in 2019, the main focus there will be to report back to the market on our phase 2 study, and then hopefully complete some sort of a commercial deal. I will leave the word to Thomas, and Thomas will explain you a bit more about what we actually do, and a bit more also on the future.
Thank you.
There you go.
I think we'll go to the next slide here. We have, when we set up the development plan 2 years ago, when we went to the stock exchange here in Sweden, we had the intention to make a very narrow development within flares in joint diseases, more specifically in rheumatoid or in psoriatic arthritis. We know there's an unmet medical need there, and these flares, in Swedish skog, is associated with pain and challenges for the patients. We still believe that we have a compound that works in exacerbations, skogs, in flares, you can call it all three, in joint diseases and other inflammatory diseases. But we do also believe that our compound, based on the safety profile that we have generated so far, could be applied in a broader approach. And following intensive evaluation of the compound, as well as discussion with our advisors, we had agreed to go for a broader indication, namely with primary focus on rheumatoid arthritis, which is a disease that is, as also highlighted here, with an annual market around $9.5 billion, much bigger than psoriatic arthritis here with $4.5 billion. Both patients, populations suffer for joint diseases, and in many perspectives, the disease, the background for the diseases and the symptoms are very similar, and likely also response to the same treatments. So we believe that based on the potential of the compound, and we have an increased market potential, and we will therefore broaden down indications to, you could call, active inflammatory joint diseases. And that was a major reason to why we went to the stock exchange to raise additional funding. Rheumatoid and as well as psoriatic arthritis are, as I said, have overlapping characteristics. They are both what you call autoimmune diseases. They have where the immune system is overreacting one way or the other to attack joint tissue. So you get inflammation within the joint, you get destruction of the joint with prolonged inflammation, and you get, of course, pain and also increased functionality. So swelling, pain, stiffness, severe cases, destruction is characteristic of joint diseases. There's a number of available treatment concepts, and most patients start with non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, and when that is not sufficient, they are referred to specialist treatment in most severe cases at hospitals, and where the rheumatologists are then initiating their treatment, which today is associated with a number of side effects. Standard treatment is typically that you start off with methotrexate treatment, and then if that is not well tolerated, and or if you have symptoms despite treatment, you continue to more expensive treatment, including biologics for injections. And even though that these compounds in many cases work very well, there are still up to 30% who actually do not respond adequately. So we believe that we have a potential with our compound, and where most compounds today have been reducing or impairing the functionality of the inflammatory system. We approach this in a somewhat different approach, as as our compound, through melanocortin receptors, activate specific immune cells in the immune system and thereby have the beneficial effects. So if you look at a typical inflammatory condition, or you could say inflammation is something that is go on and off at all time. If you have small infections or local infections, local inflammatory is associated with balanced responses. You have an increase in your inflammatory cell tissue, you get the inflammatory response, and it is resolved internally in the body. And as long as you, in this very simplified model, is not going above this stippled line, you will not have symptoms. But if you go, as for example in joint diseases, do have excessive responses, you will get your symptoms. You will have, and all the upgoing curve here is called pro-inflammatory responses. And most compounds have the ability to reduce this, especially, for example, the biologic as TNF blockers take out specific pro-inflammatory pathways. But and other compounds, including methotrexate, simply reduce the functionality of the immune system. It means it's immune suppressive, and that is associated with side effects itself. For example, increased risk for infections. And then you get up here and get an excessive response. So if you don't do something here very early, you will get an excessive response. And if you don't control that, it would gradually go over here to point number 4. You could say go over a non-resolving chronic inflammatory conditions. And when you go in that direction, you will have you will have irreversible changes. You will have destruction of your joints, and you will have chronic symptoms. Internally in the body, there is systems called that you could say here in the mild inflammatory, you have the resolution phase. But the resolution phase seems to be not too capable to handle the excessive inflammatory responses. And recently, and one of our compound, one of the targets, melanocortin receptors and the melanocortin system, have been shown to be able to stimulate this resolution phase. In other words, that you pharmacologically can go in and stimulate resolution of inflammation. And that is where we discriminate ourselves from most other treatments, that we do have here effects on the pro-inflammatory phase of inflammation, as well as we have an ability to stimulate resolution of inflammation. And that is quite novel from a drug development point of view, and that's why we believe that we could go in early in joint diseases and actually do a difference. This is just a few data slides here from mice, where we had made a local inflammation, in this case, like a model inflammation in the peritoneum, in the stomach, where the compound, when we give it on top, this curve is the white cell that inflates the peritoneum. And when we then give the compound on top of the inflammation, we clear out the white cells much faster than if the compound was not present. That is called resolution. And if you go here to just one animal model, there are inactive doses of the compound here, pore volume, an indication of swelling of joints here in this inflammatory model or this arthritis model. We have significant reduction in clinical signs, both on pore volume as well as on clinical score in these animals, telling us that this compound, similar to many other compounds and also to peptide melanocortin agonists that we have been working with previously, have the ability to reduce and potentially cure inflammatory diseases, including joint diseases. So that's why we thought it was very interesting, and we have taken this into clinical development. We have So far in the public domain, reported 64 healthy volunteers with single dose and of different approaches. It is well tolerated up to dose level where the peak exposure reached 10 times the efficacious concentration. And that we will try to exemplify it over here, where you have time after you have eaten in this case a solution of the taking a solution of our compound, and then you look at the plasma concentration of the compound, and you of course have to reach a certain level in order to have efficacy of the compound. And we believe that the efficacy level lies here at this dose level. And you can see here that the dose level, at the highest dose level, that was actually well tolerated and was not associated with any stopping criteria at all from a safety perspective. In other words, we could have went higher if we had insisted, but we saw no reason to do that. We have very, very, very high peak concentration compared to what is needed in order to have clinical effects. So that was very promising for us, and a major reason to why we decided to go into a broader development path than the original narrow one with flares in psoriatic arthritis. You can also look at the timeline here, and you can see that there's a lot of compound present 24 hours following dosing, indicating that we can make a once daily dosing, which is also, from many aspects, a very positive approach, that we go for one daily dosing of the compound, preferentially with the tablet that we are currently testing in repeated dosing in healthy volunteers. So when we report this within the next month or so, we will have the safety data generated that will enable us to go into the first patient study, and we are quite long in planning of that. We have the clinical sites signed up, and we have agreed on the protocol, and we know pretty much what to do, also which doses we would like to use. And so we aim to file this clinical trial application as soon as we have the full overview over the data that we are about to complete. So how should we position it? I already mentioned it. How should we position 1189 here in joint diseases? And we believe it should be an add-on in active joint diseases. Patient with active joint diseases treated with methotrexate, I mentioned that is first-line treatment when you come to hospital with your disease. Approximately 40% of these patients do have an inadequate response. That means that despite that you go up as high as you can with this compound in dose, you do not have sufficient control over your symptoms. So in many cases, you add and in severe cases, you take these patients and you inject steroid into the joints. We have agreed with the clinician that we would try to see whether our compound could be an alternative to that approach. So when they start up the methotrexate treatment, they will not give the injections, but see whether our compound can do something similar. Next line, but next would then be a next line treatment. If these 40% do not have an adequate response, we have to add additional compounds, and they are efficient. Most of them are efficient. For example, TNF blockers. But TNF blockers do have, in up to 30% of all cases, do not have treatment effect at all, and that's because rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, is not just one disease. That is a number of different diseases, and a major understanding of these different approaches and which pathway that is most important is beginning to be generated. But it seems that our compound, our system, the melanocortin system, is active in most patients, and therefore should also be possible to approach that. So so up to 30% do still not respond. So if we, one way or the other, could attenuate symptoms and decrease time to resolution of the inflammation, and thereby reduce the need for next line treatment, it would be great. and or of course also if we could reduce the amount of methotrexate given, and that is of course in a best case scenario that we will end there with our compound. But the way we would like to do it is to position it as an add-on to methotrexate to reduce inflammation and support resolution, and thereby reduce need for additional treatment, and also hopefully that the patient will have a better side effect profile of the overall treatment. So, as Jeppe said, last year we were working on setting up phase 1. We are about to finalize that. We are ready to submit when we have the data, and we, in parallel that, will go on with the preclinical studies, and I will just add a few more comments to that on the next slide. And then, as Jeppe said, next year, get clinical results and get our partner in so that we can secure that the compound can be brought into late clinical development that would probably be beyond our resources and also be for benefit of the company. Actar was mentioned. Actar is a very old drug. It's the active ingredient is ACTH. It's a peptide that is secreted from the pituitary gland, and the primary effect in the body is to stimulate steroid hormone release from the adrenal glands. It has shown to be active in two ways. It released steroid hormones, and that has been known for 50 years. But within the last 10 years, it has also been very clear that melanocortin receptor activation plays a very significant role for the inflammatory effect, anti-inflammatory effect of this compound. It is actually so that in many cases, especially in MS, multiple sclerosis, brain inflammation associated with severe exacerbations, first-line treatment is high doses of steroid hormones, and glucocorticoids is the same. And if that doesn't work, you have been like in what to do then. It has turned out there that Actar, ACTH, actually work tremendously well there, and that even in patients who do not respond to steroid hormone. So that indicates that a major reason to why the compound works is that it stimulates melanocortin receptors. Anti-inflammatory, resolution of inflammation. It also works locally within joints where you don't have any steroid hormone receptors. So all in all, or any steroid hormones. So all in all, it looks really like it's a very interesting approach to benchmark into. However, ACTH is difficult to treat. Is limited to difficult to treat patients. It has a number of steroid hormones related side effects, and some of them are quite severe, and that's why you are very limited in the use of steroid hormones. And the revenue that is generated from Mallinckrodt and is related to the clinical use in systemic lupus, relatively seldom but very interesting disease, multiple sclerosis, and nephrotic syndrome. All very interested indications that it would be natural for us to see whether our compound will work in that as well, and that's why we have set up this development or this pharmacology program. Actar is currently selling for $1.25 billion, has increased from 1.5 million over a 10 years period simply because it has the ability to do something that other compounds don't have. But we believe that we would, of course, not be limited by steroid hormone-related side effects. So we believe that it could be of interest to benchmark us to this compound and then hopefully get some of the same beneficial effects through the receptor stimulation, but without side effects. And so all in all, 1189 is an oral melanocortin receptor activator, beneficial therapeutic effects without specific steroid hormone effects. That should give us an opportunity in ACTH indications. So we have just raised another 22 million Swedish crowns in order to increase our activities in the company. We will focus on active inflammatory joint diseases with rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, set up clinical trial there and get them up running. We will complete an expanded phase 2 study next year, hopefully if everything goes as it should. And then we will explore the additional indication, and when we have had confirmed the results on the compound, we will of course share it with you. And I think that was all from our side.
Ja, tack så mycket. Tack så mycket. Många spännande nyheter. Fullt i kassan, spännande projekt på gång. Och en sak som jag tolkade det som, det är att det finns en klar och tydlig strategi framåt när det gäller bolagets framtid. Det är att ni ska fortsätta forskningen och sen avyttra det. Är det riktigt uppfattat, Jeppe?
Ja, det er det. Vi er som, hvad skal man sige, lille bolag, der er vi er meget fokuseret på, at der er nogle andre end os, der skal bringe det her til markedet. Og vi har en klar fornemmelse af, at der er takers til de her projekter. Det kan være Big Pharma, men det kan også være Big Biotech, som er interesseret. Og vi tror på, at vi kan lave en fornuftig deal, specielt nu her, hvor vi kan brede vores indikation lidt ud. Og det betyder, at det marked, vi kigger ind i, det er lidt større end det, vi egentlig startede ud med. Så vi tror på, at vi kan lave en bedre deal, og vi tror på, at appetitten den er der.
Bra. Tack så mycket för en spännande presentation och lycka till.